Right. Time to talk about vocal processing. This is a super important topic to cover. Everyone kind of does it differently, but I just wanted to show you how I do it. I'm using my track Remedy as an example, so you can hear a vocal in context. Just play you what I have so far, fully processed. You can hear what the vocal sounds like in context, and then we'll start over, kind of do it from scratch. Cool. All right, so let's mute that vocal. And then let's listen to the dry vocal. So first thing we want to look at when we have a vocal is the dry vocal of good quality? This is extremely important because just like with mixing and mastering, all those other things, if your vocal does not sound good from the beginning, there's not that much that you can do with it. So hopefully, whatever vocal you've gotten, whether it's from Splice or an original vocal, or you did the vocal yourself, whatever, hopefully you have a signal that's not clipping and is recorded with a fairly good mic and is not over processed. You can see by looking at this vocal here, it has not been compressed, which is great. I want to be the one who provides the compression, right? Now, one of the things you might have to do is, once you get your vocal in, is move the vocal around and make sure the timing is correct. I've already done this, but this is the kind of the bread and butter of a vocal engineer. It's making sure that everything is in the pocket and sitting correctly. It doesn't mean necessarily that everything is just like perfectly on the grid, but make it sound how you want it to sound using fades and stuff like that. So this is what the vocal sounds like, completely dry. I think I actually have, okay, I have OTT on my group because I'm a psycho. But it's only at 24%, and I thought it brought some life to it. But here's what it sounds like.
All I've been aiming for, waiting for a remedy, way to tomorrow. What am I waiting for to cure my insecurity?
Cool, so that's the vocal. Here's a few things that I noticed about this vocal kind of out the gates. It's low, right? If we look at this, and you know, every vocalist is going to be different, whether you have a male or female vocalist, whether or not that female or male vocalist is singing in a high octave or a low octave or a combination. But if we look at this on an EQ, we have a big harmonic here with at around like 300 hertz. So we'll have to take care of that at some point. But the first thing I want to do when I'm processing a vocal is EQ it very gently. So basically, I'm just going to find the lowest part of the vocal and cut below that. So you can see it's right there. And we're just going to grab below it. You don't want to make this too close. You know, you want this to be gentle. And this is just for safekeeping here to make sure that once we compress after this, that our compressor isn't being triggered by any unnecessary frequencies. So something like this is normally what I'll do just out the gates. Nothing too crazy. The next thing I would do is auto-tune. But the thing about this vocal specifically is there's some borrowed notes in the melody, like that note right there is borrowed. So it's not going to necessarily want auto-tune. So for the cases of this example specifically, we're not going to auto-tune this vocal. There's also so many different ways to do it, so no reason to really do that. So the first thing we're going to do here is compress. Now, as a general rule, I like to make the attack and release a little bit quicker. You don't want to do anything too aggressive. When you're using the glue compressor, we're using downward compression. And as like a great starting point for a vocal when you're using compressor is to get 10 decibels of gain reduction. I find for me, that to be a really nice spot. A vocal is one of those things that lives and dies by compression. Like, and anything over 10 decibels of compression is going to be aggressive. You know, it's like too much, but I think 10 is a sweet spot for me. So what we're going to do is we're just going to pull this threshold down until we see 10 at the loudest point.
All I've been aiming for.
It's a little bit too much.
Waiting for a remedy. Way to tomorrow. What am I waiting for? To cure my insecurity.
So basically it's at the loudest points when we want it to be hitting 10.
Waiting for a remedy.
Because like you can see when it's quiet, it doesn't need to do that much compression because
To tomorrow.
cool. So we're just going to put 10 back into the makeup here. So now we don't have a difference in volume.
To tomorrow.
So let's listen to this. I'm going to A/B this with a compressor and without a compressor. So let's listen without, and then I'm going to turn it on.
All I've been aiming for. Waiting for a remedy. Way to tomorrow. All I've been aiming for. Waiting for a remedy. Way to tomorrow.
You hear how much like less dynamic changes there are? Let me show you. This is a really awesome way to learn exactly what a compressor is doing. Put the compressor settings to whatever you want. And then we're going to freeze it and bring it down to a new channel. Now we can see what the audio looks like with and without compression. So you see these large peaks here are now quieter, right? And it looks like these quiet sections here are slightly louder. This section is louder. These peaks are quieter. That's what we want, right? But there's still dynamics. You know, there's still changes in volume. So this is what I would consider to be pretty solid compression. All right. Now that we've got our vocal compressed, why don't you use something like a de-esser? So many options for de-essing. You can get whatever plugin you want. They all do basically the same thing. And basically what it's doing is it's highlighting a specific range of frequencies where the sibilance is in the vocal, right? The s and the mostly just those harsh frequencies. And what it's going to do is, you know, this is just another compressor. What I like to do is just load up this single vocal female wideband preset and then just look at how much gain reduction we're getting.
Waiting for.
You can see the F in 4 was reduced there.
Waiting for a remedy. Way to tomorrow.
Those are taken out as well. So that's pretty important. In fact, I would almost call it required reading, you know, super duper important to be able to take those frequencies out. And I don't stress them too much. You know, a good de-esser will kind of just do the job for you. Then I like to use a combination of EQing and compression to breathe some life into this vocal. So my thought process here, the first thing that I want to do is just boost some of the high end. I just want this vocal to, we're going to just make 2 bands here. And you could do this with an EQ. The reason I like Pro MB is because it's dynamic. So it's going to be turning off and turning on as I need it. But I want to breathe some high end into this vocal to give it that mastered shimmer feeling, you know? So I'm just going to boost this.
Waiting for a remedy. Way to tomorrow. Waiting for a remedy.
You hear how like mid-rangey that sounds? It sounds like there's a lot of guts and almost like warmth right in the middle. And so remember what I said at the beginning when we had that harsh, that harmonic in this section right here.
All I've been aiming for. Waiting for a remedy.
It's off, right?
What am I waiting for?
So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull this down and I'm going to push this band down a little bit.
What am I waiting for? to cure my insecurity. Gone are the
You hear how much brighter and nice that sounds? Like, take away that warm ooh. I remember when I was originally mixing this song, I was listening in the gym and my AirPods, and this note was like sounding distorted in the mix. And I was like, what am I going to do? How do I make that better? And I was like, what if I just cut it out, you know, using a compressor? And it made it sound so much better. So that's going to be, you know, a lot of vocal processing is going to be very situational. So you have to really just listen to your vocal a bunch of times and understand, cool, these are the strong parts of the vocal. I'm not going to really mess with those. These are the weak parts of the vocal. Let me pay some attention and love and give some love to those sections. And then you're going to end up with a much better vocal. Basically, the whole concept is you're treating this one moment like it's the most important part of your song. And if you apply that thought process across your entire mix, you're going to end up with a good sounding mix. You know, that's really important. So that's our vocal. Let's listen to what it sounds like now.
all I've been aiming for, waiting for a remedy, way to tomorrow.
That sounds great to me. I'm not going to overdo it, but I will show you another technique really quickly that can help if you have an ultra dynamic vocal with lots of changes. And the thing you want to do here, this is called compression in stages. So we're compressing once, right? We're getting 10 decibels of gain reduction. We're catching all the peaks there. But what if we didn't? You know, what if it wasn't catching all the peaks? You could use a second compressor to see if anything's sneaking through. So let's just listen and see.
All I've been aiming for.
What we're going to do is we're going to pull the threshold down until we see maybe 1 or 2 decibels of gain reduction.
All I've been aiming for, waiting for a remedy, way to tomorrow.
That's what we're looking for. We're like, oh man, some things are sneaking through. Let's do like 1 decibel here. Now we have compression in stages, and this is like a super pro move. You know, it's not always going to be what you need to do, but like with anything, it's worth trying. You know, does it make my mix better? Does it not? Right? And if it does, cool, keep it. If it doesn't, delete it. No one ever has to know that you did it in the first place. Okay. So that's my main part of my vocal. The last piece we need to do is time-based effects, right? Normally when you're talking about a vocal, time-based effects, talk about reverb and delay. Those are your main ones. So I like to run my reverb on ascend. If we put this reverb right on the vocal, it's going to sound like there's a blanket over the vocal and it's going to sound bad. Now that might sound cool for like a creative effect layer, like where we put it completely wet like this. Like if I duplicate this and have one with the reverb all the way wet and one with no reverb.
All I've been aiming for, waiting for.
You're almost like creating a pad, right? So that's just like a cool little trick, but I'm not going to do that here. What I want to do is use ascend. And I've got a reverb on ascend here, and I'm using Valhalla Vintage Verb. It's my favorite vocal reverb. I think it sounds really nice. It's just my go-to. It's just a classic, you know, it's not too expensive. It's not too cheap. It doesn't sound cheap. Just a good reverb straight up, you know. I like to use the Valhalla suite. I use a Valhalla Room for like sound design type of stuff. And I use a Valhalla Vintage for vocal processing. That's just what I like to do. So when you're using Ascend, you got to remember that this audio effect needs to be at 100%. Because what you're going to do is you're going to add however much you feel like of this send to make the vocals fit in your mix and kind of mush in together. That's what reverb is going to do. That's why reverb is so great. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to listen in the mix. And you're thinking here, do I want my vocal to sound reverby, right? Or not, you know? And that's a personal choice. Sometimes you do, sometimes you don't. Like maybe in like an indie vocal, you might be like, damn, yeah, super reverby, hella reverby vocal will be cool. I don't really think that's the case for this song. So let's just listen in the mix, and we're going to pull this send up until we find that we like how much reverb is there. don't hear any reverb there. I want to though. So I'm gonna go to -10. Okay, so you see right when we get to -6, you're like, oh shit, there's a lot of reverb on there. That's too much, right? Reverb is something you want to feel, not hear. That sounds awesome to me. I like the way that sounds. The last thing that I like to do, and I usually do this in a small amount, is a delay. So I'm using the Valhalla delay here on another send, and I've got it on 1/2. I think that that's a nice like mix for a vocal where you just kind of want that. I've been waiting for. Right? It's adding a little bit of rhythm to your mix as well. This is something you want to do in small amounts. So we're gonna start at like 15 and let's listen. Okay, so you could really hear it there when she says way to tomorrow.
Way to tomorrow. What am I waiting for to cure my insecurity?
That sounds nice to me. You can filter this, maybe cut some of the low end out, do a bunch of things. I try not to get too fancy with these effects. I find, I don't want to say less is more because you really need it, but you don't need to go ham. You know, this is just to fill space and make your vocal sound a little bit more professional. So let's listen to our vocal. Sounds great to me. The last thing, little trick I want to show you, a little nugget of vocal love is on my sidechain group, right? This is all my instruments. I'm using Track Spacer. Track Spacer basically will detect certain frequencies and make room for them in the group that you have them on, which in my case is a sidechain group, and I have it sidechained to my vocal group. So when this track plays, you see that if I go crazy with this amount, it's just about experimenting. Remember, this is something you do at the end that is, in small amounts. It's just going to make your reverb, or excuse me, that's going to make your vocal cut through the mix a little bit better. There you go. That's vocal processing. I hope y'all enjoyed this and learned something from this. Remember to download this vocal stem and experiment with it on your own. I would love to hear what you come up with, how you would do the vocal differently, because have fun, skill expression, do your own thing. But these are the basics. Cool. Much love. See y'all in the next video.